relationship with Dorothy was not a healthy one. Some reports suggest that there was some domestic violence and abusive behaviors by Dorothy. The two of them eventually did split up when Kelsie moved to Costa Mesa, California to attend Vanguard University. Dorothy moved on to Emporia State University in Kansas, hoping to turn his passion for basketball into a career. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit of backstory before we get into the case, because I do try to find out as much as I can about these cases and the people that we're talking about here on my channel, because I think sometimes, even myself, when I'm listening to other content creators, we forget that these are real people. This happened to a family, and so I really might have some extra details here, but I wanted y'all to know all of this. So after one semester in California, Kelsie returned to Denver, Colorado, and started working at a local store called Floor and Decor. The two of them dated long distance while Dorothy was with Dorothy making the 400-mile drive at Christmas time to be with Kelsie. Somehow, between then and February of 2013, Dorothy returned to Pueblo, Colorado to move back in with his family, but I couldn't really find out exactly why. So, they continued to date until Kelsey's disappearance. So that brings us to February 3rd of 2013. Kelsie had a busy day that day, and kind of a shocking one. She'd gone to her doctor, and she had learned that she was 8 weeks pregnant. Once she adjusted to the news that she was going to be a mom, she reached out to her boyfriend and the father of her unborn child, Dorothy, to share the good news. She also shared her joy with her mother, Laura. And Laura said, "I will support you whether Dorothy is in the picture or not in the picture. Everything is going to be okay." She said Kelsie was happy. She wanted this baby, and she wanted to be a mom. I don't really know the contents of the conversation between Kelsie and Dorothy on this day, but the way that Laura reacted kind of made it seem like he wasn't too terribly excited about it, if you ask me, and you didn't. But so there are some text messages that have been released by the police that show that Dorothy did try to convince Kelsie to come to where he was, to drive from Denver to Pueblo. He told her that he had this surprise gift for her. He said, quote, "I don't want to fight at all. I really just want to give you this. Just wait and see for yourself. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway, so you just have to come here and see for yourself." End quote. Dorothy Lucas sent her like a series of what seemed to me like desperate text messages, pleading with her to please just come to Pueblo so they can talk. So it is a 2-hour drive for Kelsie, and they decide that she would come down the next day. So that takes us to the 4th of February. Kelsie worked that day, and she got off work shortly around 8:40 p.m. And she drove the 2 hours to Pueblo to see Dorothy. And this is where things get strange. As far as I can put together, text messages show that first he instructed her to go to this specific Walmart on the south side of town. According missing again. When she did not show up for work on February the 5th, a very worried coworker tried to call Kelsie. This coworker did get a text message in response, supposedly from Kelsie, but we have no proof, stating that she wasn't having the baby anymore because it was growing in the wrong place. Now, this is possible, but really seems strange to me. In the following days, Kelsie's parents and friends continued to get text messages that they said were quite uncharacteristic of her. They had some strange punctuation and very curt responses, and our family really started to suspect that these text messages were not from Kelsie at all. And I have to say, that's really good of them. I don't know if I would know if it was a family member texting me or not, except maybe my mom. She has some weird abbreviations for stuff. She makes up her own, so good for them. 4 days pass after Kelsie drove the 2 hours to Pueblo on the night of February 4th. And that Saturday morning, Laura said her whole world just unraveled. She said all of her friends started contacting her family saying, "We've been trying to reach her, we can't get a hold of her." So Laura calls Doug, Kelsie's dad, and they drove to Denver to her apartment. They go into her apartment and they realize she has not been there in several days. So at this point, they go to the Denver police. And Laura calls Dante. She knows he's her boyfriend. She knows that Kelsie just told him that she's having his baby, and she's super excited. And she asks him if he knows where Kelsie is. And he says, "If I hear from her, I'll let you know." Could you be more casual? A little bit later, Laura says he gets back with her and he says, "I heard from Kelsie. She called me from a private number. She says she lost her phone and that she will be getting a hold of her mother soon." Laura asks Dante to track this number that Kelsie called from, and he says, "Oh, okay, sure," but he never does. So eventually the police go to Dante and they question him, and he says that the morning after they met, he took Kelsie to a place called Parkview Medical Center, and he kind of alluded to the fact that she had a miscarriage there. But the Parkview Medical Center didn't have any record of Kelsie's supposed visit. Now, I thought about HIPAA laws when that came across, but I imagine if the police showed up, they could at least tell you she had been there. Maybe not what for, per se, using Kelsey's debit card. Those charges were unfortunately dropped later when investigators found out that she would sometimes give him permission to use her card, and he was released from jail. Her mother, Laura, rallied the Pueblo community and led her own searches for her missing daughter around the city. She quite regularly made the 220-mile drive from her home in Yuma, Colorado to Pueblo. They never found anything on these searches, and months turned into years without answers to where Kelsie was. And Laura said, "It gets harder and harder to come back. I dread the trips, but I know I have to do it." No one had been charged 2 years after Kelsie disappeared, and because authorities had not found a body, it was still considered a missing persons case. The police said without a body or any direct evidence that told them something happened to her, they couldn't charge it as a homicide. Former Deputy Pueblo Police Chief Andy McLaughlin said that it may happen one day, but right now we haven't had any evidence to reclassify it. Kelsey Schelling's family offered a $50,000 reward for information about her disappearance, and they set up a Facebook page called Help Find Kelsie. Then, in October of 2015, Laura had a new possible lead. She received a Facebook message from someone who claimed to be a woman, but wanted to remain anonymous. This person claimed to have information about Kelsie's disappearance. She claimed Kelsie was alive. And Laura had to think, well, what if she's really out there somewhere? So she started talking to this person, and this person told her Donthi had sold her daughter into sex trafficking. Laura said, "It's really hard to find the words to use for this. It is awful. It made me sick. I could barely function." This Facebook messenger said they needed the $50,000 in cash to help Kelsie escape. They instructed Laura to bring the money to a specific McDonald's restaurant in Vancouver, Washington, and to hand deliver it to a person named Marcus, who would be there wearing a red hat. Once the money was exchanged, then this person would go and get Kelsie and bring her back to the McDonald's. And Laura said, "What if she's been out there this whole time and I could have found her, but I hadn't?" She smartly never met with Marcus at McDonald's, but instead went to the police, and the police were like, "No, this is a scam. We're not doing it." Emails said that this messenger had provided proved to be untraceable, and the FBI analysis of their Facebook page revealed that they had used an IP address that was located in Russia. Laura said she was quite grateful to know that it was a scam, because the thought of Kelsie being out there was horrible, and she said it was just 100% clarification that there are just dirtbags out there trying to get money from these poor families, which I wholeheartedly want to punch somebody in the face for. Lauren Sir, a young single mother who didn't know Kelsie or her family, was so moved by Kelsie's story that she decided she would try to get information, her own information on Kelsie, from Donthi Lewis. So she said, "As a mom, I couldn't even begin to fathom knowing your child's out there or not out there." She said the plan was basically to just kind of befriend Donthi Lucas, get to know him, try to meet him, see what his family's like, see if she could just get him to tell her anything about Kelsie's disappearance, which is quite brave of her, if you ask me. Lauren messaged Donthi on Facebook saying she was new to the Pueblo area and she was looking to meet new people. proposed to her. She said, "I have to think about it," and she got in her car and she drove home. She said, "At this point, I was kind of done. I was in pretty deep, deeper than I ever wanted to be. I didn't want to get in any deeper than I'd already gotten." She said in an exclusive interview with 2020 that she never fell in love with Donthi and that she broke things off and never saw him again. She only reached out to tell him she was ending their relationship. In May of 2016, after 2020 covered Kelsey's case, Pueblo Captain Eric Bravo took over the case with the help of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent Kevin Torres. Law enforcement finally turned Kelsey Schelling's missing persons case into a criminal case. They quickly learned about Donthi's relationship with Lauren and a crucial bit of information he had revealed to her. Lauren said Donthi had told her he had lied to the police when he claimed he was with Kelsey in her car the evening of February 4th. He had moved her car himself. She confirmed for the police that Donthi admitted it was him in the Walmart surveillance video when he had dropped off Katie's car and returned the next day to pick it up. She also informed the police that Donthi admitted to her about being the one on the video dropping Kelsey's car off at the hospital. In late 2017, there was another huge development in this case. A man in Pueblo reported that Donthi Lucas and his family members had attacked him in front of the Lucas family home and stolen $1,000 from him. Weeks passed until the police learned they needed to move quickly to catch Donthi. Pueblo County District Attorney Jeff Cosner said, "I had information that Donthi was leaving Pueblo with members of his family, that he was headed to the Denver International Airport. So, it is where Donthi seemingly intended to board a flight to Tucson. And the concern was that once he got to Arizona, he may take other efforts to meet friends in Mexico. So police decided that at this point they would write an arrest warrant for robbery to catch Donthi before he left town." It was tense because time was ticking away. Donthi was found at the Denver International Airport. That's what I get for abbreviating. He was arrested within 20 minutes of getting on the plane for Tucson. While he was in custody, Donthi admitted to the police that he'd picked up Kelsey's car and dropped it at the hospital. Authorities reviewed this admission along with the text message records, surveillance video, and 60,000 pages worth of investigative material to determine whether or not there was enough evidence to prosecute Donthi Lucas. "I deliberated on it and I looked at the practicalities of it," Chosner said. "At the end of the day, I said, I think we have enough here to go forward. I ethically believe that Donthi Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, and I think we have enough evidence to prove it." On December 1st, 2017, 2 weeks after his arrest for robbery, Donthi was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. It was years before he went to trial for Kelsey's murder. In fact, his trial began just last year, February 3rd, 2021. The prosecution argued that Donthi did not want his pregnant girlfriend to have their unborn baby, so he plotted against her and killed them before it could happen. One of the crucial pieces of evidence was Donthi's text messages, which the prosecution argued showed his intent and plan to lure her to Pueblo. "We know that's his phone," he admitted to those text messages, Pueblo Assistant District Attorney Kyle McCarthy said. "We know that it is his thoughts and feelings about it. This is direct evidence. Remember, he wanted her to come there because he had this gift for her." prosecution also used surveillance video of Dante Lucas alone at the Walmart, and the cell phone data showing his location indicated he'd been driving in Kelsey's car after she vanished. The defense argued that this was a missing persons case without a crime scene, a murder weapon, or a body. How could the jury be convinced that this was murder and that Dante Lucas was responsible? Well, there are certainly evidentiary problems, Trostner said. We did not have a body that would have told us the location. No modus operandi of how she died. We didn't have any of that. Laura Saxton, Kelsey's mother, was the first witness to testify. She gave an emotional and powerful testimony, emphasizing to the jury her daughter Kelsey really wanted to have that baby. Ryan Riviera, a former Pueblo County Jail inmate and a friend of Dante, also testified. So-called jailhouse snitches are often considered to be not credible, as jurors often ask themselves what this witness may be receiving in order to testify, or in return for testifying, I should say. However, McCarthy said there were no deals made about the charges he would get to plead to, the time he would get to serve. There were no deals made with Ryan Riviera like that. Ryan said that Dante once told him, while they were about to play a game of cards, that investigators would never find Kelsey's body. He said Dante did confess to killing her. Some of Kelsey's close friends also testified that Dante was abusive, and prosecutors also argued he was constantly using her for her money, her apartment in Denver, and her car. Claims that the defense did not deny. The defense pushed a narrative that Kelsey was addicted to drugs. They alleged that when she left Dante at the Walmart, she was going to meet up with a drug dealer. There's no single person other than the defendant in 2017 who's saying that Kelsey was into drugs and that she was a party girl, McCarthy said. On February 25th, 2021, 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez was preparing to testify for the prosecution when she was shot and killed. Although some people initially believed it seemed suspicious that Martinez died just before her testimony, jury in Kelsey Schelling's case was a speedy decision. After 13 days of trial, the defense surprised many when they announced that they would not call any witnesses and immediately rested their case. The burden of proof is on the government, former Pueblo public defender Elissa said, so it's simply messaging in a very strong way to the jury. They haven't done it, it's not guilty, so it is a strong message. It was now up to the jury to make a decision, and it was speedy, like I said. Chostner said it was like standing on the precipice of a cliff and looking down. It was scary, but I guess the relief I had knowing it was quick was that even if it didn't come out in our favor, this question had been decided for the community. Even if it is not the answer I wanted, the community heard it and they know what happened. The jury reached a unanimous decision on their first vote. Dorothy Lucas was found guilty of first-degree murder in connection to the death or disappearance of Kelsie Schelling. He was sentenced to immediately after the verdict by the judge to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Laura Saxton said it was just so emotional for everyone on both sides. I mean, it's a sad story. It's a sad situation that did not have to end up like this if he had just let her come home. Although Kelsey's family got the verdict they wanted, they are still unable to bring her home for a proper burial. Since the trial is over and Kelsey still hasn't been found, I've just felt very, very lost and empty, said Laura following the trial. Kelsey's brother Colby said, I grabbed my mother very tightly and I held her very close. I was holding on to my dad's hand, and even thinking about it now that we have the guilty verdict, there's so much left to do to find Kelsey and to bring her home back to her family. During the trial, investigators revealed troubling information about Kelsey Schelling's possible whereabouts. They received information from the Pueblo landfill that there was some video evidence of a vehicle being there. You can't see what kind of vehicle, and you can't tell who was in the car, but their lock to their front gate to the dump had been tampered with. A worker at the landfill said it caught my attention when I grabbed the lock in my hand, and I said, well, somebody tried to get in overnight. It's what came to my mind right away. Police say Dorothy's cell phone data showed he could have been at that landfill that night, and they have strong suspicions that that's where Kelsey Schelling is. Authorities say it would be next to impossible to conduct a systematic search of the landfill for her remains. But Laura says there should be every effort made to go in there and pull her out if that's where she ended up being. I know that is a long shot, that anyone would even try to help us with that. But the thought of her daughter's body being left there is just like the worst possibility to her because he just discarded her like garbage. And she said, who wants that for their child? Who wants that to be their final resting place? No one. Her family said, we want to bring her home with us, her and Kadri both. Kadri was what she was going to name her baby. As I said, Kelsey Schelling would have turned 31 this year, and her mother said she wonders what would have become of her life. I would have liked to have known what she finally settled on as a career, if she'd ever gotten married or had more kids, all of those things. She said she feels some relief that Dorothy will not be out on the streets to manipulate any more women, and she hopes that people remember Kelsey Schelling as a little girl with a big heart, a really big smile, a really big laugh, beautiful eyes, a lover of animals, a lover of children. Silly. She was so silly. And I miss being silly with her, Laura added. I miss all the things we did not get to do together. And that is all the information I have about this case. So that's kind of what I meant when I said it was solved-ish. I 100% believe that Dorothy Lucas did not want to have this baby, and he just decided that murdering them was how to get out of having to raise that baby with or without this man. And the fact that he had to go to this extreme and made that decision so quickly, like it was almost instantaneous. He was like, no, come here. No, come to Pueblo. No, come here. I have this gift for you. No, come here. It completely horrifies me that we are in an age and time where that is just people's first decision. I know I've discussed this before, and I'm sure I will discuss it again here on my channel, but why are we in a society where people's first instinct is to just murder people? I can't. I mean, maybe we have always been this society and we just didn't know about it as much because now we have the internet and social media and the news and all that stuff, but terrible. Terrible. This is a horrible case, and I'm so sorry for Laura and Doug. Was that his name? I'm so bad with names. I don't know that I would be able to sleep knowing that my child was potentially in a landfill. I don't know that I'd be able to sleep not knowing where she was. I mean, 14 hours of just my mom missing gave me a horrifying glimpse into what that life could be like. I cannot imagine going years and years not knowing where your family member is. And bless those people for getting up and doing what they have to do every single day. But I really have my fingers crossed that Kelsey will be found and brought home for her family, Kelsey and Audrey. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here today. If you don't know,